Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Dyslexia Showcase in association with Microsoft and Made by Dyslexia here at Millfield School. My name's Gavin Horgan. I'm the headmaster here at Millfield. Millfield was founded in 1935 by Boss Meyer, and I hope you know that he had brought 6 Indian princes back and vowed to find them education here in the UK. He could find education for 4, but not for 2. Because 2 of those children had dyslexia, and no school would educate them. He thought that was unjust. He thought it was iniquitous, and so he founded Millfield. And at the same time, he offered places to a number of local children who paid no fees at all. And so the Millfield Mix was born. It's a school which is diverse, socially diverse, culturally diverse, and neurologically diverse. I think the times are changing very, very fast in our world. But in some areas, they're not changing nearly fast enough. My understanding is that in excess of 1 in 10 people has dyslexia, roughly the same proportion that are left-handed. Sometime in the 1970s, we managed to make the world more or less equal for people who are left-handed, and yet, still now, we are not adopting a level playing field for people with dyslexia. We have an examination system which is constructed to alienate people with dyslexia. We are moving further towards examination systems which will alienate them further. Our systems of testing, our systems of intervention have not moved on very much at all since Boss Meyer founded this school in 1935. And so I hope you see the relevance of this evening's event. We're really proud of our association with Made by Dyslexia. It's really lovely to host the first UK conference, and I look forward to all of the different events that we've got this evening. The panel that we have here is Kate Griggs from Made by Dyslexia, Shayler from Millfield Prep School, and Nicola Meek from Microsoft. And I'd like to start by asking Kate. Kate and I are going to sort of chair the evening for you. We're the good morning panel, if you like. But I'd like to start by asking Kate why this evening, this event has come into being. Okay?
So I came to Millfield and I was very lucky to have, from a school that I thought I was absolutely stupid, I then came to Millfield and was given the support and flourished. I then had the same situation with my children where schools weren't set up to support them, and we were lucky enough to be able to come to Millfield and have them supported at Millfield. I feel very, very fortunate that I could do that. But I'm exceptionally aware that that is really, really the tip of the iceberg, and most people just cannot do that. So I started Made by Dyslexia a couple of years ago. I've worked in dyslexia campaigning for many, many years. But we started 2 years ago, and our mission is to solve this problem once and for all. Because, as Gavin said, we've known since the 1930s what dyslexic children need. We know exactly how we help them to flourish, but we also now know, and Millfield has recognised since it started, that with dyslexia comes this incredible pattern of strengths. The world is changing. Technology is going to enable us to empower these children. It's going to enable us to empower teachers with awareness training and the knowledge to be able to support these children. But most importantly, we're at a situation where all of the skills that dyslexics have are hugely valuable in the world. And artificial intelligence is taking over a lot of the jobs that the education system is actually preparing the type of people for. The sort of the robot minds that can pass exams are not the types of minds that the future needs. Dyslexics are. So we're at this crunch point. And we were very fortunate back in October to partner with Microsoft. And we have a shared mission to work together to create free tools to solve this problem once and for all. So it's rather long-winded, but this evening is about that. We've worked together with Millfield School and the Skank School in Atlanta, Georgia, to create some amazing awareness training, which we're going to be talking to you about this evening. So that's what this evening is all about.
Thank you. Nicola, I suppose that seems like an appropriate time to move on to what do Microsoft want to achieve through this partnership?
Well, Microsoft's mission is to empower every person on the planet to achieve more. And really, this partnership gives us a partner to do this with. You know, when we think about the numbers and the impact of dyslexics and what they're achieving and accomplishing, we need to do a better job in schools to ensure they're delighted and excited through education, that they're not isolated and separated in education. So how do we use technology to empower and delight and excite those students so that we can help dyslexics not have to go through that awful journey that Kate went through, feeling, you know, oh, is the teacher trying to trick me? No, she's not. She's giving you the tools to help you do more. Because at the end of the day, you know, future-ready skills is what it's about. We're about Generation 2030. How do we give people the right tools so we can hire them, so we can get the best workforce, creating that next level of technology and insights? And really, I need better bosses, I need better schools, I need better environments. Generation 2030 is how we need to think about it. So this partnership with Made by Dyslexia, where it's about empowering every person, and our mission statement are so perfectly aligned that how could we not but be the first organisation to sign the pledge? Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And Shirley, as a head of a school, why do you think it's important that through events like this we raise the profile of dyslexia in education?
I think it's important to identify early on, or as early as possible, that a child is dyslexic. I think it's really important, therefore, to put strategies in place and take away any barriers to learning so that that child can reach their potential. Because with barriers in place, they will never reach their true potential. And
what does Millfield's known for doing this for a long time? So what happens differently at Millfield Prep, or how is that enabled?
It's normal for us, and our teachers are all trained regularly to identify dyslexia, to have strategies in the classroom to teach dyslexic children, and to monitor and identify. And then we have a learning development centre as well, which specifically for certain children who can go there and be supported. We have a huge range of opportunities at the school, so we recognise that chemistry, maths isn't just for one child, but we have art, we have music, we have design technology, we have lots of languages, lots of sport, lots of music, drama, lots of opportunity, so that every child can find their strength. And I think that's what Boss's founding message was when he founded the school, to provide that breadth of opportunity.
I think also it's, for me, I mean, when I went to Millfield Prep School, I always remember being absolutely terrified for the interview, because I was 10 years old. I was failing miserably at school, and I'd been told I wasn't going to pass my common entrance. So my brother was here at the senior school, and my parents took me in for an interview, and I can remember saying to Mr. Rushton, who was the headmaster at the time, I'm really not very good at anything. I can't pass exams, and I was given a whole list of all things I couldn't do. And it was very sweet, because he said, oh, look, we don't worry about that. He said, we can get you to pass exams, we can do all of that. We just want to know what you're good at. Let's find what you're good at. And just that flip in that instant can make such a difference for a dyslexic child, which is, I think, why we're so focused on these strengths that we know are there. We have to get the world to understand that they are so important and so valuable. And the things that you find in young people, you know, as young as 4, 5, 6, you can see a child's strengths. You can see where they're going to flourish. And for a dyslexic, that's so important to pick up on that early, so they don't get kind of scarred through the system that we have at the moment with testing at 3 or 5 and 7 and the whole way through.
And I suppose, picking up on that point, Kate, last year 62% of students achieved what is regarded as a pass at GCSE English, our qualification at age 16. Therefore, 40% of children were branded a failure. And even on retake, that number doesn't improve very much. And that's one of my great concerns, is the number of children that we are branding a failure post-16 and the impact that that has on them. And that's often done by our system. And if we have an examination system which focuses purely on terminal learning and has massive emphasis on spelling, punctuation and grammar, we are at that point alienating those children often and branding them as failures.
And I think that's where technology comes in, because, I mean, we all use spell check. If you haven't got very good grammar, you use Grammarly. You know, you dictate. There's so many things you can do in the real world, it's just crazy that we're not allowing our kids to use that in school, particularly the dyslexic ones. Should be having that so early on. Makes no sense.
Speaking to some of your wonderful students that you're going to hear earlier, and I said, oh, you know, I'm from Microsoft. Oh, you do the dictate function. I love that. I don't go to many events where people say, oh, I love that, when you start talking about PowerPoint. But it's absolutely, you know, the technology's got to be an enabler. How do we do that cheat sheet to access, to just make it easier? And whether it's dictating or having things read back to you, whatever that thing is, it's got to be inbuilt and easy, just part of the experience. So the same way you turn something on, so it turns on your learning style, your personal styles, your personal preferences. It's got to be embedded. Technology is not the learning style. Technology aids your learning style. So, yeah.
It's an enabler.
Wait, that's going to be the panel of the day.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because what you've just said is so true, in that in all of our lives, we look for how we can access the information we need quickly to solve a problem. We don't spend ages referencing this vast amount of information that we've been forced to learn and then write it down in perfect sentences. That's just daft. We wouldn't get employed if that was what was required at interview. I don't know. What do you think, if you're employing someone, Nicola, what would you say is the core thing that you're looking for in that employee?
Well, for me, it's two things. One, their passion and capability, which doesn't come across in writing style, it doesn't come across in that environment. But the other thing is we all are tested and trained to interview in a way to test different thinking styles. You know, the entire ethos of hiring at Microsoft has changed. There's an enormous focus on all diversity, all access and inclusion. And, you know, we even have hiring programs in the US that are designed for learning styles and neurodiversity. So for autism, the interview experiences is awful. Please, who are we kidding? For anyone, the interview experience is awful, but that's particularly awful. So how do we create a working environment and style that the interview process is over a period of time? So it's as positive an experience for them as it is for us. And that's what it is. It's about everyone needs to do well out of this. It's not just about us, it's about GCHQ and what they're doing from security through to, you know, what great new exciting things going to come through in the media. It's a very blessed place to be these days because we're moving on so quickly. I don't know, did anyone here in the room have to do some sort of skills testing for their last interview? I don't know when last I did that. I think it was when I left university and that was it. I've never had to do a test again.
So passion, diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely.
And Shirley, if you were employing a teacher, what would you look for?
It's interesting because I always look for somebody who is very engaging as a person, who can communicate very well. Obviously, they're going to be dealing with young children, so somebody who's very nurturing and inclusive, and someone who I always look at their CV, and actually, if I can see something on their CV that shows me they have worked in a team, then I know they're a good team player. And I think sometimes if you look at a CV and there's somebody in an isolated area, then that worries me more. So I think somebody that works in a team, that's a good team player, collaborative, that's what sort of thing I look for. And we introduced a new curriculum a few years ago into the junior department, the international primary curriculum, and that's got a skills-based thematic type learning. So there's collaboration, resilience, and teamwork and so on, and that's all part of our curriculum and how the children are set targets as well. So it's not just about the academic learning of the knowledge, it's about the person and the character and the skills.
So enthusiasm, empathy and teamwork and independence. And Kate, we should mention the EY report. What does it say about problem solving, teamwork, creativity, passion and dyslexia?
It tells you there's a direct match between how dyslexics think and the skills we need for the future. Between the two panels, actually, we're going to show you a film about the EY report, and then the next panel is about successful dyslexics, so you'll be able to hear how they've used some of their skills. But I think the thing that is so frustrating for any, dyslexics naturally simplify things, And if we only had some more dyslexic people working in the Department of Education, I think we might have, well, it might be making more sense, because here we have a world that needs these children that think differently, that can use technology, that can work in teams, and yet we have an education system that has gone back to the 1950s, and it's all about remembering something on one day and getting that on paper. It makes absolutely no sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. And we'll be able to ask the students later about the importance of coursework for them. Here at Millfield, we teach A-levels. We also teach the BTech post-16. And for those that don't know, the BTech is a system of continuous assessment. And often for children who have dyslexia, that system of continuous assessment is essential for them to show their qualities. And if we get rid of that, we are currently in consultation, the government is currently in consultation about withdrawing BTech. If we do that, we will extinguish the opportunity that those children have to show their creativity, and yet again, we will alienate them from playing a full part in society, which is a worry.
Yeah, absolutely. It just makes absolutely no sense, and I think it really is time for change from so many different levels. But I think the other thing that is so frustrating is what's good for dyslexic children is good for all children. So the way that dyslexic children need to be taught to read is good for all children, whether you're struggling learners or not. Having a classroom that is multisensory, which is essential for dyslexic children, is good for all children. So it's a win-win situation. It appears to me that nobody's actually connected the dots as to what works and what they should be doing across all schools. And I think as a charity, we're trying to democratise the tools and create wonderful things with Microsoft. We're raising awareness around this whole issue. But also core to all of this is trying to get government to really look at this issue and make the changes.
And is that insurmountable? I mean, people often then stop and fold their hands and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. What can we do about it?
I think we all have to start speaking out and talking about it. I think part of what we're doing as a charity is getting this huge global community together of dyslexic people and their parents and children to kind of say enough's enough, we need to change. It's about getting schools as well to be more vocal. I think honestly we live in a really interesting time politically in this country. I think we all know now that what politicians have been telling us and doing is maybe not what we're not wanting to get too political here, but I think we know that we have a voice and we need to kind of get that voice out there and get governments to understand that they're going in the wrong direction and that we need to change.
And is that something Microsoft can help with, do you think, Nicola?
I 100%. You know, you think about how much Microsoft's changed and their focus on continuous learning and evolution. I think, you know, I'm going to leave the government stuff to Kate, but when I think about you can tell who's been PR trained. But when we think about, we need everyone. This is something that everyone needs, tools and access, and we as Microsoft need to do a better job of going out and training people on the tools and the assets and the materials that are there. And it's not something that we should be creating. It's something that, you know, I think one of the things I'm most proud of is when we step back from trying to be the experts in the room and have the experts in the room, like Made by Dyslexia, create the training and the materials and the courseware that helps people use the technology and the materials. You know, it's about empowering everyone. So kind of come from the top and have that conversation in Whitehall, but make sure at the street level, people have the tools to change themselves.
And I think that's what's so exciting for us about creating a partnership with you and then us going to the experts like Millfield and the school in America that have taken part. The dyslexia awareness training modules that we launched just at the end of January have reached 99,000. They've been viewed by 99,000 teachers. That is unbelievable in just 4 months. So, you know, we've got much more to come that we're developing with you, but there is an appetite for it. And I think if we can be spreading knowledge in a way that it is free, it's globally available, and it's empowering, I think that will create the snowball effect that finally we'll be in a situation where, you know, we've known since 1935, it's time to change it right now.
So if you're a teacher watching the live stream, then get online now and let's even get it over 100,000 whilst we're here. Shirley, that's possibly an appropriate moment to ask you. Are there particular resources that are put in place for children at Millfield Prep that you have seen have really helped? Are there particular things that are enablers, unlockers in the last few years?
I mean, we have been using iPads now for quite a few years with classroom sets and so on, so the children can use those. Our Learning Development Centre, I'm sure Sarah will talk more later about the details of the individual apps and things that we use, but actually it's transformed learning for children, and they've engaged with it, and there are things that they can listen to, books, they use the dictation and it translates for them. So yes, we've used it and we're developing it even more and more. So technology is a wonderful tool, used correctly, of course.
I suppose a final question for you, Kate. If Made by Dyslexia could communicate one thing about the importance of dyslexia, what would it be?
I think the EY report and everything you're going to hear from the successful dyslexics this evening will kind of say that. But I mean, I'll echo what I said earlier on. We've looked at what the world needs in terms of the skill set, and we've done a lot of research around dyslexic thinking, and there is a direct match, and we have to look at the fact that we need to educate those children. We need to get everybody understanding the importance of dyslexia. So when you find people want to be identified as dyslexic because that's often a barrier for schools and a barrier for parents. So it's understanding that with it comes all these strengths. So push for that diagnosis. We want to create online screening as well that will help, because we're very aware that there's not the funding in education. So I guess a long way of saying we need to understand the value of dyslexia and really push to get the world to understand that too.
And funding for dyslexia screening, particularly in maintained schools in the UK, is that adequate? Is there enough of it? Is it going in the right direction?
I think that there isn't enough now. I think it's too difficult to find out whether a child is dyslexic. You have to go through too many expensive processes when you could do something very easy with screening. We need to be bringing technology in that space as well. But we need to get schools to want to find it. At the moment, they are trying not to find it, or they don't have the ability to find it, because once they do, they have to do something about it, and there isn't the funding there. So it's just not the priority it should be. And that's not to criticise schools. I know they don't have the money, and I know they don't have the knowledge. So we kind of have to come at it from both angles.
Yeah, I was preparing for this, and I was thinking that there's a bit of a golden triangle, which I certainly see here, and I suspect you see in any school that's successful in its approach to dyslexia. And it is one where there is a culture of acceptance and understanding, where there is training, and the training is universal and ongoing, and where there is screening, and there is the resource required to support that screening. Those of you that read the Times Educational Supplement may have seen today that the local government authority in the UK have said that they believe there is a crisis in SEN funding. They believe there is a massive funding gap in the state sector with regard to SEN funding. And tragically, because of the nature of dyslexia, when 11,000 more children have educational healthcare plans, as they do this year from last year, it is probably going to be dyslexic children that will be more squeezed as a result. And so there is a real crisis here. We have a crisis in our country around a lack of creativity, and we have a crisis around our support for dyslexia tuition. Any other aspects to add to that?
No, I would agree with everything you've just said. It's about we need to understand the value of dyslexia and get everybody, government, schools, and to try and work together to put those resources in place.
Good. And you were recently over in America, and the school that you visited there in Atlanta, how do they approach their role within the community? Do they play a key role as a hub in the community?
They're starting to, yes. In fact, the next level of training, which we're just about to start working on, we're working with one of the schools that the Skank School support, which is it's a school in the poorest postcode in the whole of Georgia. It's right next to Georgia State Prison. You can see kids there who literally are going from school to prison, because that's the sort of trajectory, because they're not getting the support they need. We're looking at working with them. There's already a team going in supporting the dyslexic children, seeing amazing responses. So it's not it's not where you teach, it's what you teach. You know, what the skills that the experts are using at Millfield can be used in any school across the world. And you know, we've been doing that all the time that I've been working in dyslexia campaigning and the charity. So that's the most important thing, is to get teachers skilled up and to be using technology to empower these kids.
And the earlier the screening, the better.
Absolutely. The earlier the better. If anybody is told, wait till 7 if you think your child is dyslexic, don't. Do it as soon as you possibly can, because the earlier you get your child identified, the earlier they get support, and the earlier their self-esteem can remain intact.
They can be celebrated and not challenged
Exactly.
in class.
Yeah, exactly.
They can reach their potential.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's about understanding your strengths as well. If you get the dyslexia thing, you'll realise there are some strong points and strengths that go with it. So it's really important.
I think there's more that we could say, but we've got plenty of other panels that we've got to work through. I'd like to ask you, please, to give particularly Shirley and Nicola a round of applause. Thank you. We're just going to do the phone. So our second panel is entitled Successful Dyslexics, so no pressure there. But just to allow us time to set up, we've got a very important film that references the EY report that Kate was speaking about. Oh, sorry.
Successful Dyslexia.
We haven't. We've got the successful... What is dyslexia film?
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Power. It's like the way that you think.
Our brains, they're wired to, I think, process information differently.
It's just the way that you see the world.
I don't think people do think the way I think.
And we're curious, we're creative.
The way I see the world might be different from somebody else, but that's valid. In fact, it's vital.
The imagination, the storytelling, the communication, the empathy, all these positives.
We can simplify things. We see the big picture.
In a world which is pretty competitive, I think to be able to look at it differently is a huge advantage.
Dyslexic minds have exactly the skills we need for the workforce of tomorrow.
My spelling makes people laugh. It makes me laugh, actually. And my reading, if I'm sight reading, it's a complete joke.
School was pretty difficult, to be honest. I wasn't a massive fan of the classroom.
I used to always hide in the store cupboard, but fortunately my English teacher knew that that was my spot.
It was hard for me to focus and concentrate in class.
I hated reading, I hated writing, like spelling in public, reading out loud.
Dyslexia can cause real challenges in traditional education. Memorising lots of facts and figures, it can be difficult.
We're not teaching kids to think, we're teaching kids to pass exams.
If education is a challenge for a child with dyslexia, you need to understand how to educate them so that it isn't a challenge.
1 in 5 children suffer from dyslexia. That's 20% of the classroom. And yet, teachers aren't trained to recognise it.
I think it's vital that teachers are trained about dyslexics. Because the world is changing and imagination is key to everything. And there's going to be a lot of kids whose potential are lost unless we train our teachers to effectively teach them.
Imagine a world where you've got, where you've got like a force of people who have this gift of dyslexia educated in a way that supports them. It means anything's possible, It means anything is possible.
Isn't it? All those incredible people that were probably all told that they were stupid at school, like I was, to start off with. Actually, what we'd like to do now, we'll go straight into playing the film from the EY report. So if we can play that now, and then we'll bring the successful panel on in a second.
Made by Dyslexia's aim is to highlight the positive side of dyslexia, the strengths that are associated with dyslexia. We're aware that there are issues in education and how education is focusing on the deficit and the difficulties, but that's also the case in the workforce, where people are more focused on the things that dyslexics can't do than they are focused on the things that they can. So we wanted to change that with some research and with some evidence that actually really looked at the positives and the strengths.
It was very easy to get involved in the Value of Dyslexia report for 2 reasons. First one is my job at EY is to make sure we build the most high-performance company ever, and therefore making sure that we know how to work with our dyslexic individuals and take advantage of their strengths is incredibly important to me and the rest of the organisation. The second is our purpose at EY is building a better working world. How better to get involved with that than to make sure that we contribute to the work that Made by Dyslexia is doing and is needed in the rest of society.
EY took the Dyslexic Thinking Skills framework and mapped them across the World Economic Forum Skills of the Future. They looked at the 6 skills that dyslexics tend to have: visualising, imagining, communicating, exploring, connecting and reasoning.
We found that dyslexic strengths align to core work-related skills and abilities of the future. There is a demand for a different type of skill set.
The speed of change in the world and the skills that people are looking for in the new world or during the fourth industrial revolution are different to say skills that have been looked for in the past, and dyslexics match very well with their future state.
A common trait amongst dyslexic individuals is that they usually have big picture thinking, the ability to see things a bit differently and to think differently, approach problems and solutions differently. It can really actually bring a better solution to a complex problem. Globalization is upon us. The technological solutions and advancements are completely changing how we interact with each other, which essentially means that at work now we're working across boundaries, across borders, not just across offices. So we need to have types of people who are comfortable with that level of change. And dyslexic individuals specifically are very comfortable with moving and shifting.
The people aspect of our business is very important in a changing environment, and dyslexics are essential, I think, to that change and that innovation and the creativity.
The ability and the confidence to be able to go talk to someone is really important, and dyslexics naturally have this ability to manage upwards and to communicate effectively with people.
So if you're an organisation that needs big problem-solving skills, needs creativity, needs individuals that can do detail but then step back and see a vision, well then I think dyslexic individuals have something to offer to your organisation.
70% of people who are dyslexic hide their dyslexia from their employers, which is crazy because we know that dyslexia has this incredible pattern of strengths. And if they can open up and tell their employers that they're dyslexic, then we can focus on those strengths and also give the support to the challenges as well.
I know in our organisation we try and lean in and step forward and make sure that people feel comfortable about talking about who they are. We have a phrase which runs really deep in our culture, which is bring all of you to work. We want people to have a high belonging here, because under that atmosphere, I think they contribute the best.
It really is about having that conversation about understanding what dyslexia is for that individual. And firstly, how can we help them, enable them at work? And secondly, where can we target these strengths?
If today we were to employ Superwoman, what we wouldn't do is complain that she can't handle kryptonite. We'd look at how good she is and all the wonderful other things she does, but we'd never really draw attention to that kryptonite's not her thing. Surely that's a job that all of us have to do with our dyslexic colleagues.
It is the responsibility of employers to create inclusive environments, but it's also, I think, the responsibility of individuals to really find where you fit. And being dyslexic is all about that. It's all about finding that workplace for you and not trying to fit in to places that aren't ready for you.
At EY, we made the bold move 3 years ago to radically change the way we looked at the criteria for which people apply to our organisation. And actually, we were really keen to create a level playing field. So we removed things like academic criteria, the schools or universities you went through, the jobs and responsibility on the internships you might have, to make sure that we cast our net as wide as possible before you embark upon your assessment with us.
Particularly from my experience at school, I would not have the grades to be able to, from GCSE and A levels, to work with, within a Big Four. So without EY's hiring processes, I wouldn't be in this seat today.
I think the first thing I would say to other businesses is read the report and get engaged with Made by Dyslexia. I think that's a great starting point. And one of the missions that we're on is to make sure that other organisations understand that if you can be more inclusive about how you look at talent, actually you end up with a stronger organisation.
We've had the most incredible response to the Value of Dyslexia report. People have been reading it across the globe, taking it into their employers, taking it into their schools and shouting about the value of dyslexia, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve. We're really excited for the next steps and actually making sure this message gets to absolutely everybody, but also the next report that we're working on with EY right now.
Fantastic. Could I welcome up to the stage Tom Alexander, Sarah Beeny, Freddie, Saul and Ben Stirling. Thank you very much. Just as a point, in your bags you will have a copy of the EY report, so do check it out because it's really, really fascinating. But thank you so much, guys. 3 of you are old Millfieldians and Sarah is a current parent. We just really want to hear your stories, your thoughts, all about your dyslexic strengths, what your challenges are, what advice you would give to people. So, Ben, would you like to kick off? No, you seem very prepared from the chat we had earlier on.
Okay, I'll start by doing a quick introduction. So, I actually was a pupil, and I was very lucky to attend Millfield School. But I came here from a different school. I was at a private school that was deemed very good and very strong in the area, but not if you were dyslexic. And unfortunately, I was told at about 10 years old not to even try to attempt GCSEs, and that A-levels was just a distant dream that I should forget about. So then I left the school, luckily, and I was fortunate enough to come to Millfield. And I immediately went into the dyslexic unit in Millfield, where I got this more, if you like, multiple stimuli approach to learning. And I learned more than anything about how I learned and how I consumed information, and how actually it wasn't that I just wasn't very intelligent. I just needed to learn in a really different way. I could read a script for a film or a movie and I wouldn't remember any of it. I could watch a film and I'll remember every line word for word and who said what. And so it just made me aware that I wasn't particularly bad at memorizing things. I just needed to learn in a different way. But I did, even at Millfield, struggle to pass GCSE maths. My practical math skills and timetables is not very good. I then went on, and I still think of myself as this person who isn't great at maths, and then I went on to work for an organisation where I ended up managing around $600 million in portfolio. So I realised that actually I was good at conceptual maths, thanks to Kate, quite late on in fact. But I love how you can apply maths, how you can use it to get results, and how you can then use it to create different outcomes. And that I'm really familiar with, but just not the practical side of it. So yeah, my experience has been an interesting one in the sense of, I think that unfortunately I learnt that I very early that I wasn't very good at certain things, and then luckily in my later life I invested a huge amount into my own development to learn actually I am very good at certain things, and that you don't get paid in this market for the qualifications you have. You get paid for the value you bring to the market. And when I realised that, I started to think about, what are my dyslexic strengths then? What am I really good at? Because I spent a lot of my career thinking that actually I was a little bit of a phony. I was in a senior position. I worked in 9 years. I went from an exec to an MD of an organisation. But I always felt like I can't even spell my CEO's name. You know, if I can't spell his name and he finds out, I'm going to get fired. Like, there's no question. He had a complicated name. But I, I became very aware of what I was good at and what I wasn't. And then I took all those things I was really good at, and that was communication and storytelling and the ability to have high emotional intelligence and understand people. And I put that into roles, and I sat there, I listed it out. I wrote all those things, and then I wrote all the roles that I thought were really relevant to that. And I wrote all the things that I wasn't good at, and then I put next to that all the technology and the Excel and spelling and Grammarly that could help me and alleviate any of those concerns I had. And then I just found roles where my dyslexic skills were, if you like, most valuable or most sought after, and I applied myself to those roles, and the rest for me was really history. I just excelled in areas where I never thought I would, and it's because I didn't try and fit into somewhere that was the wrong mould, like I felt school was for me. I just found the right place to sit, and then that was it, gave it everything.
And you're MD of 2 companies now,
yeah.
aren't you? So how important do you think times tables are for what you do now?
I do not use it any day. I actually now, it is important to learn, obviously, the financial elements and the pieces like that. But what I also learned was how to be really good at shortcuts. And I went, and instead of learning, I realized that obviously if you want to run a company, you've got to learn the finances. And I thought to myself, okay, well, this is never going to be that successful. Like, I've got to work out how I can do this. And I then went and found a trainer or a teacher who was taking 10 to 15 years of his financial knowledge and he was condensing it into 3 days, into a really easily consumable manner, which was in pictures and how to recognize the key financial statements and the relationships between them. And I thought, I can learn from this guy. And it was all about building the momentum, and I sat in the 3-day course with him and I consumed it all. And I thought to myself, if I can take not all of the detail, not all of the information, I don't need to be an accountant, but I really need to understand the core relationships of core financial statements. And I can learn it from someone who spent their lifetime condensing that into something I can understand and consume. That's going to work really well for me. And that was a habit I got into. I then was like, what other skills do I need? And I started to find the teachers that were teaching in a way that I could consume the information.
Ben, you said that there was a crucial moment when you learned how you learn when you were here. Do you articulate that to people who work for you? Do you tell them that you want your information in a particular way? I'm aware that I consume information in a very particular way, and there are certain individuals, and if you've ever done a Myers-Briggs or anything like that, you know who you can understand really well, and you know who you're going to really struggle with in your team. And those that I know I'm going to have a challenge with, I prepare in advance, and I do ask for people to surface up. If there is a lot of information, if there is a lot of detail, you're going to lose me by the first 4 lines. So what I need you to do is bring the relevant points up so I can understand it, and then if we need it, we can talk through the detail afterwards. And so I do ask people in a way to approach, but actually I think because I spent so long at school trying to understand what for me was complex and how to simplify that into something I could consume and I could actually understand, that when I took that into the business world, I found, hold on, this isn't good for dyslexic people, this is good for everyone. Everyone in my business values the fact that I can take something really complicated, a big vision or whatever that might be, a new strategy, and I can simplify it, and then I can apply it and communicate it to the business. There isn't anyone in my organisation who doesn't say, no, that's really helpful, dyslexic or not, because otherwise they sit there and I go, do you get it? And they go, yeah, I get it. And I'm thinking, he doesn't get it. Let's go through it again. So I think it's hugely valuable, and hopefully I teach them, by the way I learn, just how to communicate better and how to simplify things. I think people love to baffle with science, and it's complexity is the enemy of execution, and I think you've got to keep things simple.
Yeah, that's something that every single successful dyslexic I've ever spoken to has said, that it's all, I can simplify things and it is about keeping things simple. And it does make complete common sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What about you, Freddie? How do you think your dyslexic strengths have helped you?
It's a good question, that. And when we were speaking on the phone, I was asking myself that. I guess I'm probably quite different in the sense that I didn't come to Millfield with dyslexia. I sort of self-diagnosed relatively late in life, at maybe sort of 14. Teachers hadn't particularly raised it or noticed it. I was sort of, in a stereotypical sense, good at English, wasn't great at maths, but was good at writing. One or two of my teachers I can see here will probably vouch differently to that, but hopefully not. So I was quite unusual in the dyslexia that I was sort of experiencing, but I just had a bit of a sense that I'd always got numbers a little bit confused, back to front, 12s and 21s and that kind of thing, and sort of, I think I was quite good at hiding that, probably for myself as well as other people around me. So as I say, I was quite late to discovering it. And if I'm honest, even being at Millfield, when I sort of got the label, I felt sort of like I didn't want to shout about it. As one of 3 brothers and sort of 2 elder brothers who were very good at sport, I was very good at academia. And I had a conception myself that was a bad thing, and that somehow being dyslexic was a negative. So sort of unusual in that sense, but I guess in terms of the strengths, I don't really divide the dyslexic me from the me, the rest of me. There's not 2 halves of it, I'm just me. And the way that I approach stuff, as I said, I don't really divide like that, but when I've given it some more thought, actually, there are a lot of things that are really obviously dyslexic characteristics that I've kind of mastered. So communication, the ability to see the bigger picture, I'm sure we'll hear that said a lot tonight, are things that I'd like to think of myself as good at. So yeah, I think the negatives, I guess for me, or the things that I struggle more with, it was always about processing information and quickly, so sort of moving from the whiteboard to the workbook in writing up notes was quite challenging. And the sort of slightly odd thing for me is that having probably worked out a whole load of coping strategies and systems so that I almost parked dyslexia, I didn't really come back to it in many ways. I then had a small but sort of considered traumatic brain injury a few years ago. And actually through that, knock on the back of the head, sort of in many ways almost came to another round of dyslexia because I struggled with a lot of kind of ability to process information quickly, and if there were lots of people talking in a room, I'd really struggle to be able to have a conversation with one person. And so absorbing stuff and being able to organise myself were quite difficult again. And it was interesting going through that journey, probably as some younger children do, discovering dyslexia, but almost older as a kind of 28-year-old. So quite an interesting dyslexic experience, I guess.
And Sarah, you weren't officially diagnosed as dyslexic, but you have 4 dyslexic boys?
Yeah, I've got 4 dyslexic sons who are here, which is amazing. It's been an amazing school. But I haven't been diagnosed, but I recognise so much of what is said. And I, if I'm honest, I just thought everyone was like this. I don't understand how else people are. And I suppose that's the one thing I really recognise is when people talk about dyslexia, I think people often have said that they think I've got an information rejecting brain because if it's not relevant, I can manage to not let it go in. So incredibly obvious things to everyone else are not obvious to me because they're not relevant. And so I think relevancy is really important. But I suppose the big thing I feel is so important is that for dyslexic children, which there are clearly a lot of, it's an untapped resource. But it's an untapped, exciting resource that we have as a country. And if you had a resource as a country that you didn't bother tapping into, when we need more resources, that would be a very odd thing to do. And yet, so you think about energy, we're tapping into every resource we can. And yet with education, we know that lots of people are dyslexic, and we're not teaching them in the right way in all schools. And it's not that difficult to teach dyslexic children the right way. It's not that difficult to engage them. And it's not a really complex thing to do. It's just to speak in the right way, to teach in the right way, engage in the right way, make it relevant to the children. And actually stop focusing on, there should be 5 fingers to education, which is the arts and drama and music and sport and academics. It's not all about academics. And I can't quite understand why education is still the way it is in so many places, unlike here. I have to say this is rather wonderful, but I'm very lucky. But the rest of the world should be lucky too, because what about the children who are out there who fall through the net? And that's such a wasted resource, because it's not that we owe it to them, it's that we can get something from them. So let's educate them, and then let's get all those amazing skills and use them.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. So what about you, Tom? In case anybody realises there's a family resemblance here, this is my brother, but...
I'm much younger, of course.
So, how do you think dyslexia has helped you? And I'd love you to share the story about Virgin Mobile, because I just think that's a typical dyslexic story.
Gosh, it's really interesting listening to the rest of the panel and everybody talking about dyslexia, because I came to Millfield because I had learning difficulties. Dyslexia was sort of a badge that was put on it. I was a terrible speller, I still am, and a slow reader. And my parents spotted that. I went for a dyslexia test, and they said, well, let's send him to Millfield, because they understand that and they can do something about it. At Millfield, I love Millfield, absolutely fantastic school. I really enjoyed my time. But dyslexia was the badge I wore, and unfortunately I had to have extra English, remedial English, which I absolutely hated. And it kept me away from doing things that I wanted to do, having a great time with my mates or going off doing sport. And so it was always really a little bit of a handicap at school. It was great that the school helped me overcome or deal with the fact that I was slow at spelling, or slow at reading and terrible at spelling. But I'm very competitive. I was at school, and I love sport. I'm very competitive in everything I do. And dyslexia was something that I was embarrassed about because it sort of, at school, held me back. And it was only when I actually left school, got into business, and eventually met Richard Branson. And the way that he talked about dyslexia and embraced dyslexia just opened my eyes. And that was 20 odd years ago. And he had a theory that that actually dyslexia was, as a lot of the people in the videos and what Made by Dyslexia is all about, is not just a handicap. It's actually a skill and a talent and an attitude and a set of abilities that make you work and think differently. That if you can embrace that, that's really positive. And Richard said to me, what I think you should do is, in business, you always have teams of 6, 8, 10 people working together on a project or in a business or in a department. And you should have a mix of those team members. You should have people that are very good numeric straight line thinkers, very traditional, sort of identified as very academically strong. And then you should have 1 or 2 dyslexics that can be great problem solvers, can have that vision, can actually see the quick and dirty way of achieving a result. And that's what you should do. And, I thought, gosh, that's actually what I have been doing. In my life up until that point, I'd been reasonably successful in business. And the reason I'd been successful in business to that point is because I'd sort of worked with and collected together teams of people that could complement my weaknesses and complement my strengths. And I think that's really important going forward. In business, I've learned from what Richard taught me, and I've been very lucky in business to have the ability to sort of put those teams of people together, and that served me really well going forward. You wanted me to talk about the story.
Yes, Virgin Mobile. I just think it's a great story of perseverance and thinking differently.
Oh, very, very, very quickly. My whole life has been really, my working life has been in the mobile communications business. I worked for a company called Cellnet, BT Cellnet. None of you would have ever heard of it. But there were 2, Vodafone and Cellnet, and it was a very small business-to-business market. Consumers didn't have mobile phones. And I had some ideas of how the mobile phone could be a consumer proposition. And I needed a brand. I needed a compelling, exciting brand. And I'd met Richard Branson and took him an idea to create Virgin Mobile, Virgin Media that you know today. And I tried doing it within Cellnet, tried coming up with a prepaid consumer mobile proposition, and they wouldn't back my idea. And took it to Richard, and he backed my idea, and very quickly we sort of put a team together, and that business grew, right business, right time, and within a very short period of time, 3 years, we had 7.5 million customers in the UK. I floated the business, ran it as a PLC, and then sold it to NTL, and it's Virgin Media today. And just to fill that in, I then ran Orange for 7 years, and then put together EE that you know today, which is Orange and T-Mobile. So the mobile phone industry really has been my life, and I'm now retired and sort of run, I'm chairman of 2 businesses and on the board of another one.
The point of that for me is it's amazing how you tried to do it within a big organisation, but they didn't like the kind of different thinking, and then you had to go out to someone like Richard, who's always a bit of a maverick with his businesses, isn't he, and a disruptor. So it's interesting how that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, he really did. I was already working within Virgin Mobile. He knew I was dyslexic. He spotted that I was dyslexic. And up until the point that we had that conversation, I hid it, really. I didn't like to talk about it. And you know, the way that he understood his dyslexia and talked about it sort of allowed me to actually acknowledge it and understand it a little bit and understand the strengths. So that's why I really back what Kate is doing, and you know, everything that we've been talking about today is I think absolutely fantastic.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, that leads us very nicely on to the next film that we're going to show you, which is a little bit of a snippet from Richard Branson talking about the training that we're doing. But thank you very much, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Dyslexics have a different but brilliant way of thinking that's so valuable in the world today. So teachers, educators and parents everywhere, please take just 1 hour to watch the inspiring video course that Made by Dyslexia has developed in partnership with Microsoft. It really will enable you to understand and empower the 1 in 5 dyslexic students in your class. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, thank you. If you could, and then we'll get the next guys on there. Thanks, thank you.
Can I shuffle?
Yes, please. So the next panel is dyslexia, educating dyslexia. Could the panel come up, please, and Gavin will introduce you all.
Of course. And come. So we're joined this evening by some Millfield students and a couple of members of staff. We've got Amirah here, Lucie, Ella and Strabo. And then we've got Julie White, who's Head of Learning Support Centre at the Senior School, and Sarah Hutchinson from the Prep School. Thank you very much for joining us. And I think it's a huge thing that the students have done. And they have had almost no prep as to what the questions are going to be, and they certainly deserve no prep tonight for doing this. But I suppose it would be really interesting just to... Often people define students by dyslexia. We talked about the badge there, and we talked about someone not particularly wanting the badge or covering up the badge, covering up the fact they were dyslexic until later on in their career. And I think that's something that it's probably helpful to try and move away from a little bit. And I wonder if we could work through what you believe your strengths are, what you believe your weaknesses are, what you're proud of in terms of what you achieve at school. Amirah, are you happy to start with that?
Yeah, so I've been at Millfield now since I was in year 7, and when I first joined Millfield, actually, I was always like into my sports and things like that, and it's really helped me excel in different things and made me start doing netball and high jump and things like that. But then on the academic side, it's also helped me with my spelling, because as many dyslexic people have said, that they've always found spelling so difficult, and Millfield have helped me in the LDC department in the prep school, and now in the senior school I do study support, and it's really brought on my spelling, my writing, my English work, everything like that. And yeah, it's really made me succeed in my academics and my sport. So, yeah.
And why is it important to raise the profile of dyslexia?
I think it's important because if you are dyslexic, then it automatically puts a barrier in front of your learning if it's not recognised, because it puts all the other kids at an advantage. If they, let's say, find spelling super easy and reading, they can read really quick, and I might be reading in the class and I might be, I don't know, a page behind everyone else. So having it labelled or having it known will therefore help me, and they might give me extra time in my exams, and it will therefore make me be an equal standing point to everyone else. So yeah, it's really, I find it's imperative for everyone to be able to recognise and be able to label it, because it means that everyone will be at a fair chance and an equal chance, and it makes the working system it makes it a lot more fair for everyone. So yeah.
Thank you. Lucie, happy to tell us about strengths and weaknesses and things that you're proud of?
Yeah. I came to Millfield to do the BTech. So it was BTech Art and Design, because this is one of the only schools that offers, boarding schools that offers the BTech Art and Design. I chose to do this because, like many dyslexics, I much prefer coursework. And I think it's a lot fairer to do this way, because I can spend as much time as I want doing it, and I'm not held back with a lot of things I was in my GCSEs.
Okay, so where in GCSEs did you feel that you weren't able to do yourself justice? What was it about GCSEs that made you feel that you weren't able to show yourself off in your best light?
It was definitely, everything was done on a board, and because I worked with a reading pen, I found it a lot harder to get the information and take it on as like all the other students.
So the reading pen and the technology were you
Yeah.
the one that said, "Oh, Microsoft, you're the people that make
Yes,
the reading
yeah,
pen"?
the speech and dictation, yeah, that was me.
Ella, where do you feel your strengths are?
It's art. Like, I'm that kind of person that will see an image and it'll like come to life. Like, it'll be like with bright, bold colours, and it'll be coming to life. And I'll say to someone who's not dyslexic, and they'll say, "I never thought of like that." Like they've never like imagined. They're like, because I'm like 10 steps ahead of them. It's like, I think I'm an advantage with like art and like creative things than like my like academics, because like I'm not that person that I can't.
And how do you feel when you're doing your art?
I'm like a different person. Like it comes to life.
And you see things differently?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Strabo, where do you feel your strengths lie? Or an interesting one for you, Strabo, would be how have you developed because of your dyslexia? What strategies have you developed?
Well, I've had to develop because I take history, English and philosophy, so essay-based A-levels, so it should be a dyslexic's worst nightmare. But I think I've had to find unorthodox methods to write essays and get them in on time, and the technology has helped me do that, and fulfill my potential. And I heard lots of people tonight talking about linking, and that's partly why I do those subjects, because you can link them. So I'll hand in a history essay, and Bishop Anselm, and my history teacher will say, "Oh, I never knew he was a philosopher as well," or he wrote this book. I love connecting things. I think that's a real strength.
And at the risk of me alienating some of my colleagues, it would be really interesting to hear from you. What things do teachers do? You don't need to name them, thank you. But what things do teachers do which really help you, and what things do they do that really make it difficult for you to learn?
So with some of my subjects, for example, RS, so one of my teachers, she helps me in the sense that she's really interactive, and she'll make sure that won't just be sitting at her desk or be typing something up and it will come onto the board. She'll speak to us and be like, okay, so today this is what we're doing Buddhism, and we'll be studying it like this, and we'll make like colourful flashcards so that we can look at it later on in our GCSE, in our Year 11 GCSE revision period. And it means that it's something more interactive to do, because if I'm sitting at my desk just watching someone write on a board, like I'm eventually just going to like drowse off. So I need to do something which is more like entertaining and it's like keeping me going. And especially if I'm like going through like a 6-hour day at school, I need to like keep my energy boosted. So subjects which are more interactive, and when teachers can also help you one-on-one if you're finding something difficult, that's what I find is most important for teachers teaching you in that aspect. So yeah. Okay, so
lots of different approaches, keeping it multidisciplinary and individual attention as well as necessary to help unlock things for you. Okay, thank you. Lucie?
Yes, so definitely giving out handouts so that you don't have to read off the board, and if there is something on the board, when the teacher reads out, that is very helpful for not just myself but a lot of other people in the classroom. And I think also a lot of students find it hard when things are on black and white, and I think you were saying as well, when there's a filter, it's a lot.
Or colours and
yeah,
things like
yeah.
that.
Okay.
Colours really help connect them.
Good. There's a common theme, isn't there, which is what's good for dyslexic students is good for all students.
Absolutely.
And that's becoming painfully obvious, which is fabulous. Ella, what about you?
So in science, my teacher gives us, he writes it on the board, but he'll say you can search it on your iPads, and I use the speaking, so I speak into the iPad because there's like some words that I can't type, and I'm awful at spelling anyway. And so I'll go on the iPad, I'll search it up, and one of the ways he says use like bright colours. So there's like colours like paper colour, like coloured paper, that's the word. And I'll just write, and I'll like cut it out, stick it in, make it like easy for me to feed it in, so it can stay. And I was looking at someone else's book in another set, and their book is like, it's all black and white. And then they were going through my book, and it was just like popping full of colour. And they were like, "Oh, I find this way easier to learn." And it's just like the difference, just with like thinking outside the box. That's
great. That's really helpful. Thank you. John?
This isn't some propaganda reel, but it's true. Millfield are really good at this. I mean, they are geared up for dyslexia, and they always have been. I think, especially by the time you get to subjects you love in the sixth form, you choose subjects you love, and the information this comes in. I think teachers, they play on your auditory, visual senses and many others. I think that strengths of... Sorry, the question was what helps you? What helps me? I think the technology that's now in place for dyslexics, it enables me to do subjects like English that dyslexics wouldn't have been able to do 20 or even 30 or 20 years ago. And I think it's really unfortunate that there's so many schools where the technology isn't in place and dyslexics are unable to do the subjects that they would otherwise probably really enjoy and love. There are definite learning barriers.
That's really helpful. And actually, I wonder if I can move on to Julie and Sarah, because I want to move away from the students when I make the slightly political point, which is there's been a bit of a move, hasn't there, recently, that it would be a good thing, capital A, capital G, capital T, that we should ban mobile phones and all technology from schools. And I just want to pick up on a few of the students there. So we've heard talk of the pen that's used to read. We've heard 2 instances of the iPad being hugely useful. What's your view about the importance of technology in this environment? Julie?
I think it's hugely important, and I think every week I'm learning new things, not just helping pupils, but actually with Microsoft, they're bringing out new apps all the time, and and I think it would be looking backwards if we tried to stop that. These are tools that will make learning easier for all pupils, not just dyslexic pupils. And I think that's the way we want to go. We want to open it out, we want to make it accessible, we want to make it exciting. They're growing up in a different age to when we were at school. So I think, yeah, definitely it's a very, very positive thing. And I think Microsoft are just doing some amazing things at the moment. There are so many apps out there now that you can use on your iPad, or you can use some software or inbuilt systems on your computers to read, to dictate. It's amazing. So I'm fully supportive of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can't understand the logic at all, really, with why you would want to remove something that helps somebody. That's what we do in society, is that we try and make things easier. And we've heard all night through the successful dyslexics, the pupils talking now, all the things that make it easier for you, and technology keeps on coming up. We want to remove barriers. There's barriers in our education system quite clearly. We don't allow the visualisation, the creativity, the imaginative side. We don't really allow that in our education system the way it is. So to put another barrier in place for a pupil by removing the technology, which actually allows the child to show exactly what they can do, verbally they can tell you everything, they might not be able to process it in a way to write it down. So why, I can't understand it at all, why you would want to take that away.
What was very interesting, actually, when earlier on talking to the successful dyslexics, and we hear this all of the time, dyslexics tend to be really, really good at communicating, not just verbally, but very good at communicating and creative writing and being able to write really expressively. So for me, it makes complete joke of the fact that actually now 20% of exams marks are down to spelling, punctuation and grammar. So it's really difficult for any dyslexic child to get the top grade in English language, for instance. But then also we have the situation where we're testing their spelling from so young. So these kids are being tested in something that the wiring of their brain means that they can't do very well. And yet that's whether they're a success or a failure. It just makes complete nonsense. What do you think of that, Sarah?
Yes, I mean, the most successful people we've heard from tonight are really creative, and they've, in very different ways, they've thought about how to succeed in their business and in their world. And I think a lot of what's come through is that the successful people know how they learn best, and they've used ways to enable them to learn best. At no point has anyone said, because I could spell correctly, it's enabled me to be successful in my business. It hasn't enabled your brother to be exceedingly successful in the mobile phone industry, or anyone to be a successful entrepreneur. Spelling has absolutely nothing to do with it, and the grammar and punctuation. Whilst reading a piece of work, it helps someone to read it a bit more easily. It doesn't support the actual work. It's the information that's there. That's the point of writing. That's the purpose of writing. It's to share information. And creative dyslexics share it verbally. So why not use some tools that allow them to share that in a written form as well? I don't see spelling as important. I think it's good to be able to spell in a way that a computer can recognise it and correct it for you, but it's not a skill that supports the future world in any way at all. When we're looking at the job market and we're looking at what we're preparing children and pupils for, we're not in any way preparing them to be able to spell things correctly. It has no purpose in future jobs and what we want people to do. Microsoft, we were talking about, we want to create people for 2030 who are going to be amazing at bringing new ideas and driving the workforce and driving industry, technology. All those big ideas have nothing to do with punctuation, grammar and spelling.
And what do you think, Julie, from Beeny?
I absolutely agree. I think that the exam and the assessment system is stuck in a time that is just not reflective of what the modern world needs. The skills that you've talked about tonight, the positive thinking skills of dyslexia, that's what the workforce are looking for. And none of those skills are really given the chance to be assessed properly through our exam system. And it's actually getting worse because we've now taken away coursework from a lot of these assessment systems, and you've mentioned about the accuracy, the penalisation for skills that actually in the workforce you can just use your spell check, so you can get somebody to edit for you. They're really small skills compared to what actually people need to be successful out there. And I think there's more and more emphasis on cramming facts and regurgitating, and less on showing what you're actually capable of in lots of different ways. And I don't understand it, and I get very frustrated with it.
I think that's what's come across. It comes across with everybody, actually. It's this frustration of knowing that what teachers are being asked to do is not what's good for the students, and it's not what's good for the world. So how do we get government to listen and actually to realise that they're doing the wrong thing and they have to change direction? I think that really is a case of everybody coming together as a force to say, this is just ridiculous.
Okay. I think that's all we've got time for on that panel. I'd like to ask you to give these guys a huge round of applause.
So we're going to hand over now to Aaron from Microsoft, who is going to give us an example of all of the amazing technologies that he's been talking to us about, or we've been talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. This is where I get a podium just appear. By magic. And this is where we hope that the technology works. Hey. So, my name's Aaron Smith, and I am the UK's Dyslexia and SEN consultant at Microsoft. And I thought I'd start by just giving you a brief information about me. So, I'm quite lucky in one sense that I've been listening to everyone today, because I am severely dyslexic myself. I'm 35 years old, I have a reading age of a 9-year-old, a spelling age of an 8-year-old, and no automatic reading capability. Now, what that means to me is that I've been looking at one of these posters that Keira Knightley wrote. I can read her name, but I actually haven't worked out yet, since I've been sat there, what she's actually said. But the lucky for me is that at some point I'll get an app out and read it, which I'm going to show you. My earliest memory of my dyslexia was when I was told when I was age 9, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was the best thing that having this label. But I also, at the same time, was told that I need to have 8 teeth taken out of going to the dentist. And if we think about that feeling of going to the dentist, that feeling of stress and anxiety, and for a long time, dyslexia felt like that. And it wasn't until I actually saw what technology can do. Earliest memory of technology, like in year 6, playing with Encarta and seeing how technology can support that. And later in life, seeing how assistive technology can allow me to actually have a level playing field, be an independent learner, and change the life. And I think that when we talk about Microsoft's mission, at Microsoft our mission is to empower every person in every organisation on the planet, I think that really sums it up for me. We have a CEO called Satya Nadella that is passionate about accessibility. He's passionate about driving that change. And I think that we're looking at creating that society, creating that independent learning, empowering teachers, creating inclusive environments. Now, accessibility, disability, inclusion is part of our work, and we're looking at all these areas. So you've got there mental health, neurodiversity, mobility, hearing, visual and learning. I'm going to show you some of the learning tools, some of the learning capabilities that we've built in our products. So our inclusive classroom approach for this year, kind of our concept is looking at reading, writing, maths and communication. I'm going to not talk too much about communication today, but I'm going to show you some things. Now it starts with a story. So back in 2015, every year we have in Microsoft a hackathon. We're allowing people to work, anyone that works within the company can work with anyone and work on any subject they like to work on for a whole week. And in 2015 there was a number of people that came together that wanted to deal with issues with reading, issues with writing, issues with spelling, and a few other issues. And they created this concept, this plugin called Learning Tools, which was hacked into OneNote. That won that year's hackathon. And that's what we have today. So when we look at reading, how many of you in this room today know that Microsoft Word is free for every child in this school, every child in the UK? How many people know that? Apart from a few people putting their hands up. So as Microsoft, we offer Microsoft Word online for free for every school. So what does that mean? So I've got here Microsoft Word Online open, and you can see that on the screen I have some text. So how can I change this to make it easier for me as a dyslexic to read? I'm going to go into the View tab. We think about view, think about looking, think about seeing, and we have this amazing button called Immersive Reader, which is part of the Learning Tools suite. Now straight away it's going to take me out of that editing view and put me into my immersive view. That's allowing me there to do some manipulation to this text. Straight away it's made this font, it's changed the font limit, it's made some spacing to help with some of that crowding. We can change the size by pressing the A. We can then change the different type of fonts. Why do we think Comic Sans is there? Well, I'll tell you why. There's two letters in Comic Sans, the A and the G, that make it easier for dyslexic to read. It's the way we write letters. It also has different background colours, different themes, different colour themes. We know that some people have visual stress and that option can help remove it. But we can do a bit more. We can syllabize. We can make this syllabation. So if you see that the word geography, landforms. We can do something also clever. We can pick out our nouns, our verbs, our adjectives and our adverbs. For the English teachers in there, it's good because I have no idea what adjectives, adverbs and verbs are. But I can now pick them out, which is quite useful. But actually, we also got to think about another kind of difference. People that are colourblind, we can put labels on it as well. And also we can change different colours as well to make it really easy for us. I'm going to create one day an all-off button. I can do more. I can think about our other learners. I can focus in, removing distractions, and different types of levels of that. But of course the big thing is this.
The study of Earth's landforms is called physical geography. Landforms can be mountains and valleys.
This is free text-to-speech with synchronized highlighting, allowing students to follow that text as it's reading out loud. We have a number of options we can change with. We can change the speed.
Valleys. They can also be glaciers or rivers. Landforms are sometimes.
I love how everyone laughs at that. Because I actually, for me, as I said, I'm a severe dyslexic that uses text-to-speech every day. I probably would have it probably about, I'm going to say, about that speed.
Called physical features.
Yeah, I can understand that. My mum always said whenever I was using this to slow it right down, so that's what I'm going to show you. You can slow it down.
It is important for students.
Which is not very easy to read. But also with this, we went an extra mile. So we know that people actually find reading really difficult. So when we look at this word Earth, what about putting a picture on it to make it really easier? Remember, this is all free technology, which actually anyone that has Office 365 has got it today. So if you're in education, if you're in the workplace, it's there already. It is literally a click away. So this is my other favourite word. I love the word called. It's got 4 pictures to it, which makes me smile. But we went one step further this year. We actually also put in translation. So let's think about our students with English as additional language. I'm going to find a language that... I'm going to use Polish, actually, because I used it yesterday at an event. So what I can do here is I can turn my whole document into Polish. So if we have students with English as an additional language, and we have that first barrier of their language barrier, and then a difference, we can help with that. And again,
Badanie ziemskich landform nazywa się geografią fizyczną.
we can do text-to-speech with synchronized highlighting. I can pick out nouns and adjectives and adverbs. I can do so much with this. If we think about it as well, that's about reading. So let's now think about writing and how we write and how we edit and look at things like word predicting. So we all use word prediction actually on our phones, but I don't know if you know, built into Windows 10 is text suggestions. So we can type in words and do it. But actually also built into Word, sorry, wrong version of Word, built into Word Online this is, we also have dictation. So I'm just going to press enter a couple of times so we can see this. And on the Home tab here is this button that says dictation or dictate. I'm going to use the microphone built into my device and speak clearly and fluently, full stop, and hope that what I'm saying is being typed on the screen behind me. Full stop. This is the power of Office 365 and Windows 10 to create technology and text very easily and very quickly. Now that changes people's lives. For me as a severe dyslexic, everything I do revolves around dictation and read aloud. Many years have gone by that I've been using assistive technology, probably installing products onto my device. And in the last 6 months, probably 9 months, I have not installed a dictation product. I have purely just used dictation either online or in the desktop version of Word. We can also do other things. Spelling is an issue. I know that people mentioned spelling before. Now, I've got a really good spelling mistake at the top there. Now, normally what I was told, when I was at school, I was told use the spell check. And I can't read the spell check, so I put the biggest word in possible. But now, I can press my right mouse button and have all these words up, and I can actually see there's 3 different types of words. But if I press the arrow...
Finical, no reference information.
It reads the word out to me. Now, I know that my document that I've wrote, if I wrote this document, that it's nothing about, that word doesn't mean anything, it's not the right word. So I'm going to read the next word.
Fiscal, similar to, economic, financial, monetary.
So it said the word fiscal. Now, it's a word that I don't know, but I do know that from the synonym, the word money, my document's something about money. So I've got to guess that this is the word. And if I listen to the word...
Physical,
it said the
similar
word physical,
to...
it was the right word. And it had some more synonyms I could read, but I know I can do it. Also within this is that if we then look at the spell check and bring up editor, it's giving us more options. So again, I've got here the grammar options. Again, I can read out a version.
It is important for students to know about the physical geography of Earth, the seasons, the atmosphere, and all the natural
Thank you. But as you can see there, that I've listened to that, and actually there's something that's not right. So it knows that I need to put a full stop there, not a comma. So I know if I put the full stop here, and then listen back to it, it will then allow me to actually hear it. So again, using editor built into Word is just an amazing concept. And I think that actually when we look at technology, it's just everywhere. These tools are in every product we have. So if we just take that reading aloud, it's in every version of OneNote. That's including OneNote Windows 10 app, OneNote for iOS, OneNote for Mac, Word Online, which I've shown you, Word Desktop, Word for Mac, Word for iPad, Outlook and Outlook desktops. Thinking about some of the panels we've had today, Outlook's a really important product we use every day. It's for our email. And actually we can now allow people to read out their email. So it means they can actually read it out. And if you look further down there, you actually can see it's got dictation. It's built into Teams, our communication tool. We have over 91% of the Fortune 500 companies using Teams today. And they can read out any text within it. It's in our sister company, Flipgrid. It's in Office Lens. And it says there the Edge browser. Now, the Edge browser is really important, I think. So I've got here the Made by Dyslexia course open. Now, there's some amazing concepts in this that I've got some videos I can watch. And this is a course that Kate mentioned, around just over 97,000 people have looked at this course. Now, for me, when I did this course, I needed to press the right mouse button and press Read Aloud.
Community.
And what I can do is I can skip this along.
Community.
Or what I can do is if I highlight this bit and press right mouse.
Description. Microsoft and Made by Dyslexia have a shared mission to empower every person with dyslexia.
And again, so what that means for our students is that actually straight away, any web page is accessible to them. If we're thinking about students that have to create content or find content online, they can read it out loud. And it's an amazing concept. There's lots of features there, and in your bags that people that are in the room, you'll actually find a flyer in there that's got this information on that you can see on the screen today, and of course the web address there is available. We also made maths inclusive. So built into OneNote, our digital binder, our ring binder concept, we can actually write maths and actually then use Immersive Reader to read it out. It will also then read out the steps. Sorry, I skipped a step there. If you want to find out more about that course, the Made by Dyslexia course, all you need to do is go to education.microsoft.com and sign up using your Office 365 account. It's completely free. It's an amazing community to be part of, and you can receive then your badge to say you've got that course. What I've talked about today is kind of that concept of growing that independence, creating independent learners, empowering our teachers, and growing inclusive schools. This is an amazing takeaway for you today. aka.ms/inclusiveultimate. Everything that Microsoft is doing regarding accessibility inclusion is available at that link. Every video we've created, every blog post, every article we've written at that web address. Now, what I recommend everyone in the room to do is get their most assistive piece of tool they have in their pocket called their mobile phone and take a picture of it very quickly so I don't run over on time. And why I talk about it. And this allows us to actually do it. And the reason why I say that we should use the device is actually that when you go back and look for your pictures to find a picture, like I do, I use it to take a picture of my registration number when I come into a school because I can't remember my registration number. I go down and see a picture I've taken of a slide. And it was really useful the other day because I found something I really wanted to use. I will bring this up later if people want to see it. I wrote this a few months ago. Putting technology at the heart of learning with accessibility tools built in for everyone create independent learners and ensures that all students reach their full potential. You can get hold of the deck today that I've just done with lots more resources in at that web address. You can follow me on Twitter. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, and thank you, that was fabulous. An inspirational end to this evening's formal part. To those that are in the room, all of the panellists have kindly agreed to stay behind to answer questions. We also have various other key people here, and I'm really pleased to be able to say that the chair of our Millfield Foundation, Duncan Goodhue, has kindly joined us as well. Duncan is yet another OM who will very kindly and very humbly speak to you about his own journey with dyslexia, if you would like, afterwards over drinks. I feel inspired and motivated by the messages that I have heard this evening to do more as an organisation. I would encourage you to as well, whether you be parent, student, teacher or interested party. I think we've all got something to do here. I do think that we need to be part of a positive lobby. I do think we need to engage with government. I do think that if you're a teacher, you need to get online and undertake that free course. If you're a school, you need to become accredited by Made by Dyslexia. All of that will help to level the playing field and to make this a fairer and more inclusive world. Thank you very much for coming this evening. Thank you.